When you see a Zuckerberg or an Elon Musk, when you really look deeper into their story, things weren't easy. There was a lot of obstacles, and we like to really look at the wins, but people do not focus on the losses and the adversity that they dealt with, the relationships they lost or burned, or whatever they did. It's a whole pathway. Venture Out Loud, where we have candid conversations on running a venture capital firm, as well as investing in founders, planning for profits around a purpose, and making a positive impact through entrepreneurship. I'm Navin Goyal, your host and CEO of LOUD Capital here in Columbus, Ohio. Today's episode, we'll be talking about where we came from, our experiences, our previous careers, what brings us to the table. I'm here today with Ryan Retcher and Darshan Vyas. It's good to be here today. It is a sunny day here in Columbus, and I'm very happy that I'm with my boys. Ryan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. So far, so good.
All right. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Obviously, we've known each other for a long time, but a lot of people ask, you're involved in a venture capital firm. What were you doing before this? How did you learn? How did you get here? So it's really important to know where you came from.
Yeah, so I spent about 9 years in finance, in banking at JP Morgan Chase. And I had a career, a lot of different roles that were, some were behind the scenes, some were client facing. Towards the end of my career was really the thing that kind of triggered my change in perception and perspective of entrepreneurship, and what ultimately led me to make a big change. But really, that experience, I was out in Southern California, working a market out there for our small business banking treasury unit. And my job was essentially to go out and meet with clients that we had out there, and really just got connected with a lot of entrepreneurs that I hadn't really experienced before, in the context of how they looked at business, what specifically they were doing. I was very used to working with entrepreneurs that were more on the main street, blue collar type of spaces, manufacturing, logistics, CPA firms, things like that. And not really, hadn't really gotten exposed to tech entrepreneurs or these entrepreneurs that were just really all about creating something from a vision that they had, and taking something that didn't exist previously, build it, and grow it into something new and unique.
So you're saying something that's really interesting, because I'm sure there's a lot of people working for a bank in the banking industry that have not gotten exposed to entrepreneurs. And you're saying basically, and you're probably gonna start talking about what brought you here to the table, but how does industries and how do more people get exposed to entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship, right? I'm sure that's a common question that I know I'm asked, but I want to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think it's easier now than it was back then. That was back in the 2009, 2011 zone. And back then, I feel like it was just culturally becoming a thing to look at entrepreneurs. Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and Elon Musk and Tesla were just kind of coming to the forefront of what the public perceived of this new wave of entrepreneurship. And back then, it was really more just kind of myth. Now, I think you can go pretty much anywhere, any city, any university campus, any co-working space, and you can connect with and meet entrepreneurs that are doing all sorts of different things. Back then, before that point, through my education, through my professional experience, I just really didn't see it. And really what transformed me internally and got me thinking about, okay, I need to do something differently, because I was thinking in the context of banking. And in banking, my colleagues and I were helping them grow their business through lending, through products, et cetera, that were supposed to help them. But when I met this new breed of entrepreneur, we couldn't lend to them because they didn't have traditional businesses that fit into a box that the bank saw as a good quote unquote investment. And it frustrated me because I'm meeting with all of these great entrepreneurs that were creating great value, that were aggressively growing their companies, growing their revenues, and they were almost growing too fast and too unpredictably for the bank to like. And so that's when I started investing personally in some of these companies because we couldn't help them as a bank, but I was so intrigued by them and I was so intrigued by the entrepreneurs and their why and why they were doing things. And it was just completely mind altering from my experience up to that point.
So I'm going to go to what you said back in 2010, 2011, when you felt entrepreneurship or meeting entrepreneurs wasn't as perhaps accessible or desired. And so what changed? And I'm going to give it to my man Darshan here, who has been a big influence on me getting involved in entrepreneurship back in the day. He is a person who makes entrepreneurship sexy. And so you tell me what has changed in the eyes of young folks or people who are now getting involved in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I think the whole paradigm has shifted when it comes to education, just the traditional transition into the workforce. Historically, people graduate high school, they go to college, and then they work for the big corporates, right? And that mindset has shifted. I even dealt with the same situation working at a big bank, which I won't name the name, but their ecosystem in big corporates, it's very constraining, and people are trying to solve problems and try to make things happen, but in big corporates, there's a level of bureaucracy that kind of sets a ceiling for the workers, so they want to kind of spin out and kind of do their own thing. And I think that's what has kind of resulted in this shift of entrepreneurship. And they see people like Elon and Mark Zuckerberg and things like that doing big things, and you don't have to go through that whole traditional process. So I think that was just kind of the renaissance of entrepreneurship, in my opinion.
Well, I'm curious, how long did you last at your big bank?
I was there for 2 years, but I was mentally checked out after the first 6 months.
and was there anything that happened early on in the first couple months or within the 6 months that you said, this is just not for me?
Yeah, so I remember going through my orientation, and I started off as a management trainee with the bank, and we spent probably a month on how to organize our planners. And I thought this was completely worthless. I mean, don't get me wrong. There needs to be a sense of organization, which is, I have Ryan here for that. But
well, I have an idea for those listening out there who have a YouTube channel or make YouTube videos. If you do a 5-minute how to organize your planner and give it to banks, there's a business right there.
Right. Yep.
You can save a lot of time, increase productivity, and increase the engagement of your employees, and perhaps they stay longer than 2 years.
Right. Well, yeah. So, I had my employees coming to me, asking trying to solve real problems, trying to change things, in our departments that would streamline things. And quite frankly, no one wanted to lose their job of making, when changes are made. So everything was kind of pushed down and no one really listened to you at the bank. So that's when I realized, okay, this is not for me. Unless I want to just be a yes man, a yes ma'am, corporate life wasn't for me.
Got it. And so I'm in corporate life right now. I'm listening to this podcast. I've been here 10 years. I'm in a good place. I'm excited, but I'm very intrigued about entrepreneurship. In fact, I've been thinking so much about it that I want to jump ship. But how do I do that? That's probably one of the most common questions that people reach out. How do I make a leap? I know I want to do it, but how? So, Ryan, do you have any wisdom or thoughts on this kind of generic question I'm asking, but I think very pertinent and relevant?
Yeah, I think a couple of different things. Making a jump cold turkey into entrepreneurship is really hard. Sometimes things work out and go to plan and the transition is smooth, but most of the times in my experience, from what I've seen, what I've experienced personally and what I've seen from probably the hundreds of entrepreneurs that I've experienced and worked with over the last decade plus, being in venture capital, it's really a mental shift that I might suggest going and working for a startup first, taking the leap, getting to experience something where you do have a lot more entrepreneurial capabilities, in the sense of if you go into a startup and you're working there and you have an idea, usually that's going to be nurtured more and actually welcomed more so than a large corporation.
Yeah, and to add, the biggest mistake that I see with early entrepreneurs is they'll jump ship from their job, but they have no savings. My recommendation is get 6 months of savings, under your belt, so you can do your startup comfortably. What tends to happen is people start struggling, they don't have funds, and they start getting desperate, start making bad decisions. And a lot of cases, even VCs, they like to see that the entrepreneurs at least have some skin in the game. So when you're starting up a business, you don't have any money invested into the company, and you're trying to pitch other VCs or other investment groups, or friends and family. People want to know that you're committed to that project. So that's my recommendation.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that these are we're all unique personalities here today. And I'll say Darshan will say 6 months. I'll probably say a year to year and a half. Ryan's looking at me like I would at least have 2 to 3 years of savings. So, I mean, these are all opinions here, but this brings up a point about how many people want to get into entrepreneurship, how you make that, or how do you make that connection to go there? And so I think all of us here, and a big reason of why we're doing this podcast, is to start talking and educating on what entrepreneurship really is, what the reality of it is, the sacrifices you have to make, the skill set you should be prepared to learn or bring to the table, and just thinking outside of the sexiness that we all see on screen or the news, right? When you see a Zuckerberg or an Elon Musk, when you really look deeper into their story, things weren't easy. There was a lot of obstacles, and we like to really look at the wins, but people do not focus on the losses and the adversity that they dealt with, the relationships they lost or burned, or whatever they did. It's a whole pathway. And myself, if those of you who don't know, I'm a physician by training. I'm an anesthesiologist. I used to put people to sleep, and now I'm recovering and try to wake people up for a living. And what that means is educating, enlightening, sharing experiences on my own entrepreneurial journey, which has brought me to the table. And, working my tail off to be a physician, which is all I wanted to be. And then realizing that I was in a position where my voice wasn't being heard, not unlike Darshan's, and not being listened to. I felt like I could contribute more. I was helping people, but could I help people even more? And that's what brought me into the world of entrepreneurship, where I am bringing that skill set of working hard for people, but just in a different manner. And so for those out there who are in their job or in a career and feel like they're not being heard or they're not reaching their potential impact, entrepreneurship to me is a vehicle that can potentially help you. It doesn't mean you have to leave your career. You have to make any crazy decisions, have to worry about life savings in the bank to jump somewhere. But it can mean that you can experience other things, other pathways that hopefully fulfill you and enable you, and keep on educating yourself on problem solving and how you can help people. How can you help yourself? So Ryan, tell me more about, you got exposed to entrepreneurs in the banking world, right? So tell me a little bit more about that and how you connected to your entrepreneurial world here.
Yeah. So for me, it was really this experience. And I was very blessed to have a job where it was my day-to-day to go talk to these people. And at a certain point, I remember just really being frustrated that, kind of as Darshan mentioned, I was so limited in what I could do. And I was so exhausted of saying no when my personal evaluation of companies was, wow, I see this vision. I see where you're going with it. I want to help you. And I felt powerless that I couldn't. And so I had this pent-up frustration that just grew and grew. And I reached this point where I continued to do my job, but I really spent a lot of extra time with entrepreneurs and just talking to them and asking them a ton of questions. And it was more for me to get to know them and how they got to the point where they were at, and just learning more about how they did things and how they made a change in their life. And so, again, I was very lucky to have that, very blessed to have that opportunity. But to be honest, it didn't really fully prepare me for what was next and taking that leap and going into entrepreneurship, on my own, and building a company that I intended to help other people and invest in other people. And the things that I had to learn by failing and really come to grips with throughout the journey as I went, that I wasn't prepared, to do. I wasn't prepared to think through those things. I wasn't prepared to experience those things. I wasn't prepared to feel those things. And nothing that I had done previously through schooling, through work, prepared me to experience failure and letdowns and everything else that happened.
Can you share something specifically about failure, right? We see quotes, we see people talking, I failed and then I kept going. But we're trying to be candid here, right?
Yep.
Tell me, relate to me. I'm out there. I failed. Give me an example.
So I really think this is different for every individual, and failure means different things to different people. I'm not talking about total failure or, anything that I'm talking about the failure that we sell ourselves. And, through this entire journey, I personally learned that my biggest insecurity in life is letting people down. And so my failure was hanging on too long to different things, be it decisions, to putting money into something, to working with different people, to all sorts of different things, because I had this personal insecurity and fear of letting people down. And I didn't realize that was what was driving me. And I think every single person has their own fears and insecurities, whether they know them or not, whether they admit them to themselves or not. And those can often be our biggest, I guess, either linchpins. If you know them and you know how to work around them, they can help you kind of guide around individual day-to-day failures or obstacles that you can move around, or they can be, the Great Wall of China that you just simply can't climb or walk around.
So you seem like you've gone through this path of self-discovery. So you've had the benefit of having these experiences and now knowing this about yourself. How do people really get to learn about themselves? Was there someone who, from an outside perspective, gave you this and you actually listened? How do you actually help people help themselves?
For me, it was a mentor and a coach that I sought out. I was having a lot of troubles dealing with things, and I had a few friends, a pastor that really invested in me, and they suggested, because they could see very clearly what was completely unclear to me at the time, and they made a few suggestions, and I sought out someone that could help me, that ended up coaching me and helping me, call out my own BS and discover that. And he wasn't telling me what my BS was. He helped me discover and ask great questions, but I think it might be different for everyone. But being open to being open, and being open to talk about things, and being transparent with whatever's going on, to those that are around you, to people that are working with you or for you or you're partnered with. You don't have to dump your heart and soul every time you talk to someone, but when there's opportunities for transparency, people can help each other. And that's the biggest part of my journey has been in getting to work with you guys. We all have our own things, and we're all here for each other because we're transparent with each other. So that's the biggest change that I've made throughout that journey, that has had the most impact for me in finding success, or some semblance of success, at least in piece of what we're doing and why I'm doing it and all the things that happen on a day-to-day basis, they're not going to wreck me because I know who I am. And I discovered that through experience and through working through it and talking through it.
Oh, that's good. So I also have exposure to kind of the world of coaching, and that's really helped me as well. And for those of you who've never tried one and are thinking about it, I think it's worthy of a trial. For those of you who don't have the money, don't have the time, or aren't around coaches that you know of, or this is the first time you even hear about coaching, what are some other things? I think one thing is perhaps talking to peers or trusted friends and just trying to help each other talk through things. One thing that I've discovered is, it's one thing to hang out with friends, but to have a serious conversation over a cup of coffee or a drink or something and just start talking about, hey, this has been bothering me. What do you think about this? It's really just trying to open up conversation so it's a little more objective and it can be focused on kind of self-discovery. I don't know, Darshan, do you have any thoughts or experiences or ways that you've helped yourself?
Yeah, as Ryan mentioned, the hardest time saying no to people, and sometimes that gets you in trouble. It's you try to be helpful, but then expectations are completely skewed, and if you can't follow through on what the other person's expectation is, then you end up being the bad guy. And so one of the things that I'm working on, one of my self-development areas is saying no to people, and the initial no might be hard, but it's just a quick Band-Aid rip. It's not going to have any festering feelings or whatnot. But if you try to help someone and, things don't work out, I think we all experienced this in the past, we want to be that VC firm or that wants to help people, help entrepreneurs. And people even sometimes, say that as a weapon against us. Like, oh, I thought you were supposed to help. Your messages, we're here to, for the people or whatnot. But, at the same time, I try to explain to them, we can't help everyone. We do our due diligence on people that we want to try to help, and then we can make a firm commitment that, yes, we can help you. So I think I myself am getting into a better place, but I'm not fully there yet.
That's a great point. And I can tell you from a place of a physician, it's not unlike the example that Darshan just gave, where you're in a hospital and there's so many patients to treat, and you're a physician and you haven't been taking care of yourself. You haven't eaten, slept, you're stressed out. And sometimes you need to pull out and take a break, and you need to feed yourself, and you need to give yourself some time, even though there's more patients to see. In the end, you need to take care of yourself in order to help people. And one way that we're all guilty, like you said, we're relatively nice people and we want to impact people's lives, but we also have to be realistic with our own time and lives and the people around us who we care about. And so one way I've been, really following this formula is saying no to someone I don't know, who I don't feel like I should put the time in right now, is saying yes to someone you do have a relationship with or care about or have committed to. And so that's really helped me say yes to the people that maybe matter to me and no to the people or the opportunities that aren't important at the moment. So that's just kind of one guideline that's really helped me.
I'd like to add one more thing, because I think it goes to being real for us, but also I think helpful for an entrepreneur, and to close the loop on what we were talking about in that, because we talked about the emotional side about it, but like mistakes, when you're building something, you tend to go into it with good intentions, but you make mistakes and you have to get over them as an entrepreneur. You have to own them. When you made a mistake, you have to recognize that other people are going to make mistakes, and you just have to get over it and move on and learn from it. And festering and again, I'm just saying this from experience. When I fester on things and I see other people fester on things, it's painful. It's painful for everyone around them if you care about them. So that's one thing that I've just noticed with entrepreneurs and myself, that if you can't get past those things, it's hard to build a business and be empathetic with other people, because you're just dealing with those things. And whether it's guilt or it's feeling like, man, I should have done that better. I could have done that better, but do it better. just learn and do it better. So
And
that's kind of what I want to.
I think that's great. And I think a mindset that I've adopted, which initially was not the same as today. Before it was, hey, I made a mistake and I'm embarrassed about it. And I'm ultra focusing on this mistake that I just made 5 minutes ago and I can't get out of my mind. And so I was paralyzed. I wouldn't move forward, or the conversation would end, the meeting would end. I would walk away, hide my face behind something. Now it's, hey, I made a mistake. Let's focus on 10 other things. Hopefully 10 of them aren't mistakes, right? It's just focusing on this. Let's keep going, not dwell on what just happened, keep going and figure out if there's something that can move us forward in this meeting or this conversation. I think that's the only difference in my mindset that has shifted, which is not that I don't make mistakes. I probably make more mistakes, but I'm just comfortable knowing that's the process. And so once you can really accept that, it is extremely empowering, right? That's how a anesthesiologist is talking on a podcast right now about entrepreneurship. I've never formally trained. I'm very highly trained in putting people to sleep in an operating room. I am not trained to do this right now, but I am speaking from the heart, speaking from experience, speaking around trusted sources, speaking about what I'm passionate about. And that's huge. That itself is putting yourself out there. I'm probably going to screw up a lot of things today, the rest of the day, meetings, etc. But it's really about moving forward. And that's the human condition. And once we all accept that we're human and far from perfect, and we are making plenty of mistakes, but keep pushing forward, that is like this quote unquote secret. But why is it a secret? Let's talk about it more. Let's realize that even the quote unquote successful people that we follow on social media, you see in the news, or you see have ultra wealth or ultra impact or ultra big companies, they all make mistakes, but they all move forward. That is the common thread that I would say is there.
Completely agree. And it's one of those things where you're either going to get past them and move forward, or you're going to dwell on them. And, it's not going to be something that's going to help your company, help your thing that you're trying to build. And getting past that is the most critical thing. It's been something I've had to do, that we've all had to do and figure out on our own. It's not something that's taught in school. In fact, it's the opposite. It's really hard to make mistakes in school, because if you get a question wrong, or you do something wrong, there's negative consequences for that. So admitting a mistake is very hard from that psychology standpoint. You go into a large corporate career, you're always, like Darshan said it earlier, people are too afraid that something's not going to work and they're going to get fired. So this fear of making mistakes in the education and corporate space makes it very difficult to transition into entrepreneurship, but it's not impossible. If you come prepared, if you know that is something that you're going to have to both learn to experience and work through and be transparent with yourself and others, then that is going to tee you up for success.
So what I've heard is basically the educational system, the corporate culture has beaten out the human element of accepting that mistakes are part of life. They're punitive. And then you get out in the real world, let's say, of entrepreneurship, and you realize that it's okay and you keep moving forward. So we learn and then we unlearn. That's a lot of our lives here. And that's really, in conclusion, what we've been talking about, our experiences, our previous careers, what brought us here. And I say we wrap up this episode. I think in general, I really appreciate the candid conversations we're having today about we are normal people who had obstacles in front of us. We kept moving forward. We made plenty of mistakes, and we just want to share where we are right now, what experiences we've had. And for those listening out there, kids, adults, whoever else, everything you do, you're going to make mistakes. Keep moving forward, keep problem solving, keep helping people, and we'll all be in a better place. So thank you for listening out there. This is Venture Out Loud, where we have candid conversations on running a venture capital firm. We hope this is helpful. Talk to you next time.